Welcome to the WorkJoy Jam podcast. I'm your host, Beth Stallwood. In this episode, I am joined by the wonderful Sam Flynn. Now, Sam is a social media trainer and a digital wellbeing expert. And in this episode, we talk all about this relationship we have with social media, with our phones, how easy it is to become lost in the scroll and to spend and invest our time in things that perhaps aren't making us feel great, aren't helping us, aren't making us do the things that we really, really want to be doing, and how easy it is to get stuck in those zones. So really looking forward to sharing this episode with you with Sam Flynn, and I'll come back at the end and share some of my takeaways. Here we go.
Welcome to this episode of the WorkJoy Jam with the wonderful Sam Flynn. Rather than me introduce Sam to you, Sam, would you like to tell our audience a little bit about you, who you are and what you do?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. So I am a social media trainer of over 12 years now. I've been delivering social media training into businesses. And I have recently moved into the digital wellbeing space. So I'm now also a digital wellbeing coach, and I help individuals and businesses manage their relationship with the digital world, the huge digital world, and make sure it's a positive rather than a negative relationship.
Oh, we're going to have some fun talking about this subject today because for all of the brilliance of social media, there's also some real terrible stuff that happens as well, isn't there? And that idea that we need to be responsible for managing that relationship ourselves is such an interesting one. And I think possibly like a massive source of joy and also a massive source of gloom if we get that managing and the balance wrong with how we use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right when it says it's kind of on us, because the platforms aren't going to do much to, do that for us. So we do have to make the effort to make sure that actually we come away from using social media feeling lighter and happier rather than heavier and filled with a sense of doom and gloom.
Yeah, definitely. Before we dive in, because I have about 1,001 questions about how we do this thing, because it is a challenge, I think. It's not one that you think of when you're at school. Well, it wasn't one I would have thought of when I was at school because digital didn't exist, right? Because, we had a BBC computer in the corner of the room. But this job of being a social media trainer and a digital wellbeing coach, how did you get there? What was your career journey that led you into this space?
Yeah, and I think it is like you say, I always wanted to be a teacher when I was at school. God, I would hate to be a teacher now. Fair play to all the teachers out there. But
yeah, well done.
Absolutely. I couldn't think of anything that I just would not suit at all. But yeah, when I actually decided, what do I want to do at university? I picked psychology, kind of not thinking really in terms of what my career would be, but just thinking, I've got really real interest in people and understanding them. And from there, I did business psychology. I did a master's in organizational psychology. So that kind of switches it into a business capacity of like how we're managing people and culture and everything to do with that. And from that, I started my first business doing employee surveys for companies. So project managing the kind of annual staff survey or specific surveys related to projects that were going on or anything like that. And it was with that first business, actually, that I started using social media 13 years ago. LinkedIn became like my main marketing tool in kind of getting out there and in front of these businesses, to the point where people started saying to me like, oh, you keep popping up on LinkedIn, and what are you doing on this LinkedIn thing? And I actually went on a few courses and thought, these courses are really not great and I think I could do it better. So I decided to set up a sort of sideline business doing social media training. And over 12 years ago, there wasn't many people doing that.
No, that was quite new then, right?
It was really new. Yeah. I mean, it was one of those things that businesses were starting to go, maybe we should do this social media thing, which now you can't even imagine, can you? It's like every business jumps straight in there. As a result, it took off really quickly and became my main business and has continued to be for those 12 years. And then, so that's how I landed in the social media world, just purely by accident in a way, just sort of seeing a little gap in the market and thinking, oh, I'll jump in there and see how it goes.
Yeah.
And it luckily was the right move to make. I mean, now there are many, many social media trainers and experts out there, which is great. It just shows the volume of demand really that's grown with it. And then the switch to digital well-being, I think it's always been something that's been on my mind. And actually, when I've been delivering training to businesses, I've always spoken about managing their time on there and talked about the negatives. And, it's always been part of my training because I'm so conscious of it. As just personally too, as someone who's running a business and managing it myself. But really, it was probably during the pandemic that this properly hit home for me. I was home alone with my 3 daughters because my husband got to go out to work every day. He's a project manager in construction, and construction didn't stop, so he left the house every day. I had my
He got to escape legally.
He got to escape. I know. I mean, we look back now and he says he thinks he's so lucky, but at the time he thought he was putting us in danger, by just walking out the door every day. But yeah, now he looks back, he thinks, God, I think he would have gone absolutely crazy trying to work from home. But so yeah, he was one of the lucky ones, which meant I was home alone with the 3 girls who were 18 months, 4 and 6 at the time. So I know, trying to run a business with
3 under 6.
With 3 under 6 knocking around the house was essentially impossible, particularly a training business, because obviously it's a case of sitting down and talking to people, which I could do through Zoom, but not with kids knocking around, an 18-month-old bouncing on my knee. It just wasn't doable. And a lot of my work I did on my phone. I just transferred kind of like, right, if I'm going to keep this going, I'm going to do it on my phone. So my phone became a bit of a permanent fixture in my hand, to the point that I'd say I then became addicted to having it in my hand. And it was actually my middle daughter who said to me one day, "Mum, you're always on your phone. You're not listening to me." And it was like the dagger to the heart moment where you're like, oh my God, she's really held a mirror up to me here.
Yeah.
And she
the baby bears have come back and said, look.
Exactly. And that was a massive turning point. I really drastically reduced my phone use. And in fact, my mental health was suffering a bit at the time as well, as it was for many people during the pandemic. So I also just deleted all social media off my phone and thought, sod it, I'm going to just have a month off. Then there's nothing to look at on my phone. So it will help me in that respect. But also it'll just help me switch off for a month after kind of a crazy few months of trying to keep the business going, trying to keep 3 children happy. And I had never felt happier than when I was in that month of deleting those apps. So yeah, it just got my own brain thinking, and I bought a few books actually on the topic. I just got really interested in it. And then one day thought, while walking the dog, oh my God, I could actually help other people out with this. There's not enough people talking about it, and not just talking about it, but helping other people and helping businesses, and helping everyone understand how important this is to manage that relationship, because we are always switched on. So how do we switch off, and how do we overcome addiction to social media, and how do we make sure that as businesses we're encouraging a culture of positive relationships with the digital world rather than negative. And that's how it came to be.
Wow. So it's so interesting, isn't it? Because you've obviously worked in social media in this kind of world, and then it swung too far, right? You've got,
I think so,
to the point where you're overusing it, and it's no
Mm-hmm.
longer becoming a tool for kind of the good stuff, and it's not being great for you. And then thinking about, actually, how do I build that into my business and use my experience to help other people with this challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, without a doubt, it had gone too far for me. And I think, I've been on social media for years and years. I mean, I joined Facebook when I was 19, which is 19 years ago, so it's a long time to be online, plugged into the social media world.
Yeah.
So I think I was overdue that kind of moment of going, I'm deleting it all, I'm leaving forever. But it was only a month in the end. But yeah, I think, as a result, I'm not just someone who's kind of ducked in and out now and again and I'm talking about it. I'm someone who was there, in the trenches, as it were, who can help other people who feel that they're stuck there.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting. One of the things you said earlier in the introduction was around, the personal responsibility factor. And with everything to do with WorkJoy, I'm big on you've got to take personal responsibility for this. It's not up to somebody else to do this for you. And the
Yeah.
social media companies are definitely not going to do it for you
No.
because it's in their better interests for their advertisers and for, you know, the way they make money for you to be scrolling,
Yeah,
for
they're
you to
actually
keep doing that.
well, they actually design them to be addictive.
Yeah.
Most of the main social media platforms have, you know, experts within the teams who are trained in addiction and not in solving addiction, in actually making people addicted, because that is what they want. They want you to spend as much time scrolling as possible because, as you say, that's how they generate ad revenue. So they're not going to stop that model because it will drastically reduce their income. So we can't wait for them to take action because it's not going
No.
to happen. Although they put a few little things in, you know, place now and again, and you know, they all of them have got these kind of blockers now and stuff, or time alerts and things like that. But regardless, the action of scrolling and trying to deliver content to you all the time that pulls you in isn't going to end. So it is really important as individuals that we think about our own scrolling habits and whether, as I said earlier, is it actually adding anything to your life? I think that was the question
Yeah.
I asked myself when I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just constantly scrolling on social media. Is this adding anything from my life, or is it taking something away? And at that moment for me, it was really taking stuff away from me. It was lowering my mental health. It was taking me away from my children, as in, you know, I wasn't fully present with them in the room. I wasn't listening to them fully, you know, so it was impacting my relationships. And, you know, that for me was actually the wake up call that I needed to change.
I've got some stuff to ask you, but before I
Okay.
do, I've got an observation, and it's an interesting one about like the language we use to describe these things. And because we've been talking about kind of lockdown and COVID, etc., one of the things that used to drive me mad is when they called it social distancing,
Yeah.
because it wasn't social distancing, it was physical distancing.
Yeah.
Physical distancing. And yet, interestingly, social media, if you are sat there scrolling by yourself, is
Yeah.
not social.
No,
It's actually the
absolutely.
opposite of social.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
almost being withdrawn from social. So there's some interesting stuff about, like, we call it social media because I think it started with as a platforms for, you know, connection and collaboration and, you know, keeping in touch with people. But actually the dragging you in, I don't know if it's the same for you, but the dragging me in of like scrolling through other people's content makes me less sociable.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're scrolling through people's content, you're not socializing with them, are you? You're not interacting with them in any way, unless you only comment, you know, unless you only look at the content of your friends and family or people that you've built a relationship up with, and you're commenting on them and you're interacting with them through that content. Otherwise, if you're just scrolling and looking at it, there's no social interaction going on there at all. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, and I've had a few people kind of push back and go, oh, but social media is great for allowing people to feel connected. And to a degree, there are some people who, yes, make great connections on social media and it's, you know, help them release feelings of loneliness. But those cases are few and far between. And the majority of us, as you say, are actually missing out on social interaction because we're spending so much time scrolling or stuck to our phones. You know,
Yeah.
it's so true.
And it might be that we're also missing out on, you know, as you say, connecting with your relationships, with your family, connecting
Yes.
with the other things that you want to do in your life, or even just like connecting with going to sleep, because that's one of the worst ones, isn't it? Like the before bed doom scroll.
Oh, absolutely. It's a really, really common time for people to get caught in the scroll and lose sleep time. You know, if you're going to bed at 11 and then you're scrolling for an hour, you know, there's an hour of sleep you've lost. But the other big impact on sleep is, of course, you're lying in bed in the dark with a bright light shining in your face. And that's sending signals to your brain that it's not sleep time at all. In fact, it's wake up time. So when you do put your phone down, you either struggle to get to sleep or you're tired enough that you'll pass out. But then you might wake up a couple of hours later with your brain saying, okay, it's time to get up. And that's often when people then reach for their phone again because they can't sleep and start scrolling again. And then the other thing is we're finishing our day, filling our heads full of content. So if you do, you know, even 10, 15 minutes scrolling at bedtime, you're finishing your day by filling your head with content and then expecting it to just completely switch off. when you've just fed lots
And
and
then
lots of
wondering,
different content types.
why am I not sleeping?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
it has a huge impact on sleep, which of course has a huge impact on so many other,
Yeah.
important aspects of life and health and well-being.
And I know for me personally, it's not the same for everyone, but if I don't get good sleep, everything else goes potty. Like
Yeah,
it's just the foundation of all of my well-being is good sleep. So
absolutely.
that is a really big thing. Yeah, there are some good things about social media, right? There are things
Of
that are
course.
great. And I like the way you're talking there about like kind of what's it giving to you and what's it taking away. Is that a good first step for people to think about if they've got that feeling that maybe their relationship with social media is a little bit out of kilter? Is that a good exercise to start with?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm still active on social media. I'm not someone who's like, everyone get off social media, throw your phone in the bin, let's all get old school Nokia bricks and go back to the old days. I know, nostalgia. Got nothing more to do on it than just play Snake. But, I still actually enjoy social media. And I think for my business, it's been hugely powerful and of course given me a career. So I'm not going to be a social media hater, and I think that is really important. I always talk about conscious versus unconscious use, and I think if you can be very conscious in what it's giving you and what you want to see on it, so for a business, for example, it's giving you a marketing opportunity, it's giving you connections with people that you might not otherwise have been able to connect with, etc. And then using it to do that as opposed to just getting caught in the scroll. And also another unconscious use is of course that scroll. Doing things like setting a timer. I will have a scroll on social media. I love a little scroll now and again, but I will be very, very specific in how long I'm going to spend scrolling. So lunchtime today is an example. I'd had my lunch and thought, you know what, I'm just going to make a coffee. I'm going to have 10 minutes scrolling. And I set a timer for 10 minutes and I spent 10 minutes scrolling and the timer went off and I put my phone down and I went back to work. And I think that kind of conscious use is really important because it's very easy to slip into the unconscious where we scroll and then go, oh my God, where's the time gone? What have I achieved in my day? And we end up feeling low and unproductive and dissatisfied.
And I, totally get that. And the whole actually being conscious about it. Have you got any kind of signs and signals that we might be able to think about that might tell us, because we might just be feeling rubbish, right? We might feel unconnected or something. We might just be feeling rubbish, but not know that this is the thing that is causing that.
Yeah.
What are some of the signs that you would say we should be on the lookout for if we're feeling not great and it could be something to do with our social media use?
So probably the first one I would look at is your screen time and see where you're spending your screen time, because sometimes people don't realize just how much time they're spending on any particular platform. So on iPhones, there's a setting in the settings called screen time. In Android phones, it's called digital well-being, and it will tell you how long you're spending on each app every day and every week. And it can be a real eye-opener for some people. So if it says things like you're spending 2 hours on Instagram and you're feeling really, really low, there's going to be a connection there. You're spending a good proportion of your day scrolling on Instagram and your mood is low. So let's now try and reduce that down and see if that impacts your mood. Or, another thing is finding your phone unconsciously in your hand. Like suddenly it's there and you're on your phone. So if I think again, swinging it back to the conscious, like going like, oh my gosh, my phone's in my hand again, noticing that kind of behavior in yourself. And then also when you are scrolling, looking at what you're looking at as well, like being more conscious in what you're consuming.
Yeah.
Like, for example, for some reason, I must have paid attention to the wrong video at some point, but for some reason at the moment on Instagram, it seems to be sharing lots of widowers sharing their story of their partners dying. And it's obviously very depressing and sad. And I've suddenly noticed that. And I've started telling the algorithm, no, I don't want to see this content because it's not going to leave me feeling happy, So being really conscious of what actually am I consuming? What is the algorithm feeding to me? And switching into that. So putting your phone down and go, okay, how did that make me feel? Like, I've just had 10 minutes on Instagram. How do I feel now? Do I feel happier for it? Do I feel like I'm grateful for what I've seen on there? Do I feel depleted and down and sad? And, so being tuned into your emotions when you're using it, I think is really
Yeah.
important. But yeah, that screen time one makes a big difference, because I think that really highlights to people, if there's something we're doing for 2 hours a day and we're not feeling great, it might have something to do with that thing we're doing for 2 hours a day.
Yeah. And like, what else could we do with that 2 hours?
Yeah.
Because there
Yeah.
isn't a person in the world that I have spoken to in the last year that hasn't said they've got too much to do and not enough time to do
I
it.
know.
There's not one
It's
single not one single person.
no.
Everyone is over busy, over scheduled, not enough time in the
Uh-huh.
day. But is it actually? I'm not sure it's actually not enough time in the day. It's like how we're using the time we have in the day.
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
think it's really interesting. We're talking about two things here. Number one is the time you spend on it, which there's many more productive ways. But equally, it's about being okay with a little bit of time on it, isn't it? It's about
Yeah.
saying this is the time I'm happy to allocate to it, and
Yeah.
being kind of boundaried around it. But I think the
Absolutely.
second point is that you could also just spend 5 minutes on it and it could still make you feel rubbish if the content you're consuming is not helpful,
Yes.
innovative, emotionally engaging, in the right space for you, aligned to your value. There's so many things that could make your day or break your day on social media.
Yes, absolutely. It's so true. It's definitely not just time, it is what you're consuming. And you can be in charge of that, So it could be simply that you scroll past things very fast that you're not interested in, or if it's kind of suggested content to you through the algorithm, if you click on the three dots at the top of the post, you can tell it, I don't want to see posts like this. You can be the kind of the creator of your feed, curator rather, of your feed, and make sure that it is something that is leaving you fulfilled, rather than the opposite.
I had no idea you could do that.
Yeah, no, you can. Yeah,
Hello,
you can.
top tip coming through from Sam.
Yeah.
I need to do the top because I'm like, why is the algorithm feeding me
Hmm.
this? Have I blindly looked at something and it's doing it? So for me, I'm all about like the dog and animal content. That
Which is
if I
always
spent
a
10
joy.
minutes looking at dogs being stupid, not being
Yeah.
able to catch balls, etc., or pandas,
Oh, yes.
because they have no ability to kind of save themselves. It is hilarious. Like that for me, I'm really happy with.
Yeah.
I like some inspirational content. I like some positive content.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally, if you think about social media beyond the kind of social media platforms, I stopped watching and engaging with the news
Hmm.
because it was making me like anxious
Hmm.
and not happy. And I thought, actually, I'm going to stop engaging with that stuff. Equally, I think there's a lot of kind of the influencer content of
Yeah.
people pretending that they live perfect lives
Yes.
and of
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
almost it feels like it's almost deliberately making other people feel not good enough.
Oh,
And that
absolutely.
for me is the worst type of content.
Yeah, no, there's so much of that. And it doesn't even just have to be influencers, to be fair. It can be everyone. We all like to put our best selves online, don't we? Whether it's the best
Mm,
angles, whether, in some cases, people are putting obviously heavily filtered images up,
yeah.
whether it's saying in business terms, I made X amount of business this month. How should you make, or just turned over six figures, and all of that kind of thing that can make you go, oh, why not me? And yeah, it's really important. This is back to the conscious use, really. It's really important to be conscious that most of what we see on social media is a stretch of the truth in
Yeah.
some respects, or there's certainly an element of the truth that's missing from most posts. And not many of us put our worst selves online. So yeah, it's so true. We have to kind of avoid that comparisonitis to things
Yeah.
that aren't actually completely true. And
Yeah.
even if they are, comparing sort of our chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 23, or forgetting actually all the things that are amazing in our own lives rather than worrying about the little bits that are missing.
Yeah, and I think that comparison is the thief of joy
completely.
phrase is so unbelievably true.
Yeah.
And I think, we are comparing our chapter 1 to other people's chapter 10, get that. We're also comparing how we feel on our insides to other people's what they put on the outside. We're not comparing what they feel, we're comparing what they've decided, curated, put out there in edited content to what is our unedited internal story.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we forget that, I think, sometimes. And I do think that there is a lot of content out there that's like, I made £10,000 today for 5 minutes work, and you're like, okay, either that's not true, or it might be true, but what else? There are so many factors involved in these things that we need to, I think, maybe have a little pinch of salt with some of the stuff that we look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably one of the issues of social media, really, that anyone can put whatever they want on there. We can all make whatever claim we want on social media. And unfortunately, there are many people who forget that is the case and, start making huge comparisons with their own lives, which can be really damaging.
Yeah. And I think for me, there's a really big difference between feeling motivated because someone else's success has inspired you. For me, that would be a positive engagement with that. It's like, oh, how could I use some of the amazing stuff that they've done and take it into my own life and build from there?
Yeah.
So kind of a positive intent to engage that person or that content because it makes you feel good, makes you feel inspired, makes you feel like you can do what you need to do and it aligns with you, to the I need to change everything about myself because I'm rubbish because someone else is better than me.
Yeah.
And I think those two things can get confused quite easily.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's back to being conscious, isn't it?
It totally is. And do you do things like, so you had this big break, and actually when you look back on it, a month doesn't sound like a long time, but actually if you were at the place where you were holding your phone in your hand and looking at it and you didn't really know you're doing it to not looking at it at all, 4 weeks is actually quite a long time to cold turkey it.
It is. I know it's quite an extreme approach, really, and not necessarily one I'd recommend because it's almost like it's a bit akin, isn't it, to like, oh, I need to lose weight, so I'll just stop eating for a month, and we know that doesn't work because then you go back to kind of binging and everything. So it's not necessarily the best approach, depending on your personality and such like. But at that time, it was the best approach for me. But people can employ this through other means, like I'll take one day off a week, for example, so take Sundays off, have it set up on your phone that social media is blocked on a Sunday, so you can't access any social media on a Sunday, and have a whole day off. Even if for some people that might feel like a stretch, start with I'll take Sunday mornings off, or I'll take Sunday afternoon off, or I'll have 1 hour a day off. I think it's really important to kind of look at our own situation and see how bad the situation is and then work slowly backwards from that situation, rather than going kind of complete cold turkey like I did. I mean, it was a different scenario, wasn't it? The pandemic was just a completely different kettle of fish, and
there was nothing normal about that time in any way, shape or form. And I think, it was about getting through it, wasn't it? In whichever way you can work your way through this and survive it.
It was exactly that.
Now we're kind of in the zone of things are kind of more in the new normal way. And it's so interesting you talking about kind of like completely cutting off or kind of cutting off for a bit of time and actually using things that are like the settings. And you talked about being conscious quite a lot, being conscious of what you are putting in and what you're getting out of it and how you kind of manage your time with it.
Yes.
And then would you recommend things like, I think I need to do this, I think this might be my project for the next week, is I think probably there's a bit of so you've got to about detox, but I think there's also kind of a bit of a declutter required in terms of who you're following, what you're engaging with, etc.
Yeah, no, it's always worth having a little tidy up of your social media. I mean, you can do it as you go along. So if you see a post and think, who is that? Why am I following them? I've got no interest in them. Unfollow now, kind of thing. Do it as you're in action. But yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it is worth sitting down and going, okay, who am I actually following here? Is it hitting what I'm wanting to achieve, or is it not? Let's unfollow, let's remove, let's mute in some cases. I've spoken to a lot of people who say, oh, my auntie's posts really get me going and annoy me, or you know, like you said earlier about avoiding the news, and there's always that person who puts out every single news story, and you're like, God, how can I avoid the news when they keep sharing it? So you can mute people and they will never be aware of it, and it'll just stop you seeing their posts in your feed. So you can do things like that as well to just nice tidy up and keep your feed how you want it to be.
Yeah, I think that's going to be my next thing, is to actually do that. I mean, it's interesting because I don't think I'm on it all the time, but I usually spend ages scrolling when I'm bored.
Yes.
And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, I could have done something way more productive in the hour I've just spent scrolling.
Yeah, it's definitely a boredom activity, isn't it? I mean, I've just been ill, so I have had a week really where I've scrolled a lot, I'll be honest, and it is down to illness. It's down to I'm literally can't move off the sofa or my bed, and I'm bored, but I don't even have the energy to read or take anything kind of intense on in my brain, so I'm just going to scroll on my phone instead, and I will hold my hands up, you know, and say that there are definitely moments of weakness for me too. For boredom, I usually advise having yourself what I call like a boredom buster list, and it's just a list of things that you can do when you're bored that take different amounts of time up, and have it even on your notes on your phone. So if you're kind of picking up your phone because you're bored, go straight to your boredom buster list first and go, okay, well, let's have a look what else I could do. And if none of them are going to tick your boxes and actually what you really do want is just have a bit of a scroll, then fine. But again, it's back to being conscious, isn't it? You know, and going, oh, actually, and set the timer. Yeah. But actually instead going, oh yeah, actually, you know, it is a nice day. I could go for a walk, or I could sit in the garden, or actually I'm feeling up for sorting out my wardrobe, or maybe I fancy painting my nails, or, you know, and they're the sort of things that are on my list. So yeah, having a bit of a boredom list, but also keeping your hands busy. And I took up crochet about it was when I was pregnant with my second daughter, and she's going to turn 8 soon. So it's over 8 years ago. For similar reasons, actually, in that my eldest was coming home from nursery giving me every bug going. I found that I was ill all the time when I was pregnant with her. And so as a result, I was, you know, again, back on the sofa scrolling on my phone and thinking, oh God, I hate my life. I just can't get off my phone. And within a week, I thought, sod this, I need something else to do while I'm sat on the sofa. So I taught myself to crochet, and I've crocheted ever since. And it's one of the best things for stopping you going on your phone, because you can't crochet and look at your phone at the same time. So that's all, you know, it's good to take up a hobby that allows you to kind of sit and relax, and maybe watch the telly or a movie at the same time, but your hands are busy enough to not be able to sit and scroll.
Yeah, it's so true. And I relate this to my version of mindfulness, is that I am not a person who kind of meditates. It's not, it actually makes me more stressed than the stress reliever. So my hands need to be busy for my brain to be not busy. So I find lots of these activities, and in the last week I have done like an adult Lego set that made a bunch of flowers, and I was oh my God, this is amazing. And now it's my new hyper obsession, so I've ordered more, and I'm going to be doing loads of Lego. I do things like jigsaws, I do things like playing the piano, anything that kind of keeps my hands so busy and I have to concentrate so hard on it. I can't even think about anything else, let alone scroll and do that kind of stuff. I think
sound exactly like me.
Really, for me, it just works. Hands busy, something that I find hard enough that you have to really concentrate, but that's not related to work or social media. That kind of thing really helps me.
Yeah, no, I'm exactly the same. And all those that you've listed there, Lego. I don't do any adult Lego, but I do love helping my kids with Lego. And we've just got a big Lego box, and we just get it out, and then we all make things, or we set challenges to make things. Jigsaws. I also play the piano. But yeah, crochet for me has been the one that's like carried on through. And pretty much I'd say majority, you know, 6 nights out of 7 of the week, I will do at least 20 minutes crochet. It's exactly the same thing. You know, I can't sit and meditate, but I can sit and keep my hands busy and create instead.
I've not tried crochet, but one of my lovely friends came to stay with us a few months ago, and she came and we were watching a film, and she came out with her crochet, and she was like, again, she learned to do it when she was pregnant.
Right. Okay.
Might be a pregnancy thing. Who knows?
Could be. Your hormones
she,
a bit
she was
strange
like,
then.
it just keeps my brain in the right space.
Yeah.
Someone I was with this morning does cross stitch in front of the
Yeah.
telly. So I think there is definitely something about that stuff and finding the things that really, really work for you. I'm also probably partly because I'm obsessed with dogs and my dog, but like a dog walk is one of the best things you can do.
Oh,
and it's you
absolutely.
can't walk safely and scroll your phone at the same time.
No, but one thing I used to do with my dog walk is I used to listen to podcasts, and I thought I was being clever. I thought, yeah, I'm walking the dog and I'm taking on information at the same time. Go me. And actually, it was only when I started reading books about how switched on we are all the time that I realized that was the wrong thing for me to do, because my dog walk was the perfect opportunity for me to switch off. And yet I was still using it as an opportunity to consume content. So yeah, now I highly recommend anyone who's a dog walker and podcast listener, save your podcast for another time and use your dog walking time as complete switch off. Because that's, for me now, that is when my best ideas come to me, is when I'm out with the dog.
I agree. And I tried the podcast thing because I thought, I can listen, I can be really efficient with my time. But then I think, why am I being really efficient with this time? This time's supposed to be for your brain and for allowing it. It's one of the things I allow myself to do, and it works so often, is to allow myself to have one question in my mind when I go for a dog walk and allow the answer to come as part of the dog walk. And so if you've got like a big business question or even a life question you want to answer, and it's like a tricky one, and you just put it in your head before you go out, I find, and there's a really specific location, which is hilarious. There's a location on one of our favourite dog walks where kind of 4 paths join together. And that is usually the moment where those 4 paths join together where I go, that's what I need to do about that.
Isn't that interesting? How
so
funny that it's where the paths meet, that
I know.
your connections in your head come together as well.
Yeah.
That's so good.
What I now do is I now listen to podcasts in the car.
Yeah.
When I'm driving.
Yeah.
Or when I'm on the tube or on the train or whatever it is because that time for me, I can't do anything else with that time, so I might as well do that. And I don't find it particularly relaxing being on a train or driving, etc. So it's about, and
you kind of want that audio activity going on as well while you're doing those as well, don't you? Compared to when you're out in nature and you want to listen to nature instead.
And it's a bit like, I feel a bit like you saying, I'm a social media trainer and I'm going to do digital wellbeing, so I'm going to tell you how to switch off your social media as well. But I sit here and go, I'm a podcast host and I'll tell you, don't listen to my podcast while you're going for a walk. But actually, we've got to do these things sometimes, right?
We do. And I did think, as I was saying that, I was like, I'm saying this on a podcast. I shouldn't be saying this, should I? But it is so true. We've got to find, I listen to podcasts every day, but it's like while I'm cooking dinner or when I'm in the gym is another one, because I like to cut out the noise of the gym. So I don't want to be in the noise of the gym. I want to be away from it. So I find that a really good time to listen to podcasts as well. So it's just finding your own time, isn't it? But I think for me, a walk is not that time. A walk is a time to be switched off, without a doubt.
Yeah, and allow your mind to just be kind of free and be outdoors. And there's so many amazing things about being outdoors from a well-being perspective that it's so worth it. And I think one of the messages I'm really hearing from you in my head is, this isn't about kind of all or nothing thinking, and it's not about the extremes. What it is about being more conscious. It's about finding what works for you. And it's about being more mindful around the time we're spending in it 100%. And what we're looking at, and making sure that what we're looking at is being helpful, interesting, etc. And to really be aware when it's gone too far in terms of time, or when it's not the right content, or when it's just not feeling right, and to actively do something about it.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's absolutely that. It's about, it's, and I'll go back to kind of the food analogy. It's just about having balance. So we can have a slice of cake, but eating the whole cake probably isn't going to do as much good. Or we can enjoy the odd McDonald's, but having McDonald's for dinner every single day is not going to do us any good.
Probably not.
So it really is all about balance and understanding, how can I make this just part of my life that's okay, rather than something that overtakes it. And just kind of going back to that time thing, actually, when you look at the time you're spending, so the average UK person spends 4 hours a day on their phone, which doesn't sound horrific if you think about, we'll spread through the day. You can see how 4 hours can soon sort of be added up through all those little 10 minutes we spend on there. But then we kind of group that together over the course of a year. That's 2 whole months of the year that we're spending on our phone without sleep. So 2 whole months of full 24-hour days that we're spending on our phone. And I think that's when we go, oh, am I getting back what I want from that? And if you are, then great. You're spending 2 months of your life a year doing something for you that you're really enjoying, that's giving you fulfillment and happiness and everything else you need in life. But if it's not, that's when we go, okay, I don't want to be spending 2 months of my year staring at my phone. That's not how I want to be living my life. So that's when we have to start kind of questioning the time element and, whether we're spending too much time on something that just isn't filling up our cup.
God, that's quite a stark reality, isn't it? When you say that, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like, I was a bit like, sharp intake of breath. And it's a bit like, when I was looking at the WorkJoy book and looking at the kind of research behind it, and we actually spend a third of our entire lives working. At work, whatever version of work you do, it's a third of our entire lives, and we spend a third of our life sleeping. So why on earth for that third of your life do you want to be miserable at it? Let's do some stuff about it. And for me, when you think about 4 hours a day, okay, it sounds quite a lot, but I can kind of understand how it happens. And then 2 whole months out of a year, that's big.
That's big. And then you've got people saying, like you said before, I haven't got time. Look, I'd like to achieve this, but I haven't got time. I've always wanted to do a degree, but I haven't got time. I've always wanted to learn a new language. I haven't got time, and it's that when we kind of go, okay, well, maybe even if I just halved my use and got back a month a year, what could I do with that month? Like what could I achieve in that whole month that I've given back to myself that will really, make me much happier and more fulfilled.
It's a great one to kind of ponder on. And I'm really gonna I'm scared right now, and I'm not gonna look at my phone while we're doing this. I'm scared to look at my my settings and look at how many hours a day am I spending doing this. But it's a really good reminder for us all that this stuff is important. It's something that can be great, and there's no reason not to. But there is a reason to be more conscious about how we do it, and to be more kind of take that ownership of doing something about it if it's not working for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if that step is scary, that first step of going, oh gosh, let's have a look what my screen time is. It's, just take it and go, okay, that's what it was, rather than kind of dwelling on it and going, oh, I've wasted all that time. Just looking to the future and going, okay, it was X amount. I'm going to try and reduce that down to this amount, and that's my target, and that's what I'm going to work towards.
Yeah, amazing. Right, can I move us on to the quick fire questions? Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay. Question 1 is for you personally. What is always guaranteed to bring you a bit of work joy?
I think for me personally, it is results for my clients and customers. That's always where the joy comes for me, when they say, oh, you've made a real difference. And I think, and it's making a difference in other people's lives. That is the joy for me, and makes me go, yeah, this is why I'm doing it.
Brilliant. Love that. Question 2, what book are you currently reading?
Oh, I'm currently reading Stanley Tucci's, what's it called? It's upstairs next to my bed. Taste. And it's like his life, his memoirs, but through food. And it's a real joy to read. I think he's so lovely, and I can actually hear his voice as I'm reading it. So yeah, that's the current book that I'm reading. I have a stack of business books that I want to read, but my problem is I can't read a business book when I'm in bed, because I just start thinking about work. So yeah, I do need to start some of my business books, but that's what I'm reading when I go to bed at night.
Love that. And I watched the TV show that he did, Finding Italy. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have,
And I think he's like one of the most charming, lovely people. And I said to my husband when we were watching it, we became obsessed with it, basically. We're like, we love this, let's watch Stanley Tucci. And I was like, we've literally spent 20 hours of our lives watching some dude eat food.
Yeah, that's
And
a
I was
bit like the
why?
book, to be honest.
But why is it so engaging? I don't know.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I know.
I think I'm going to have to read it next because
Oh,
it
it's
was just wonderful.
do. It's a really good book.
Question 3. What is one bit of advice that you have been given by someone else in your life that you always find yourself coming back to?
Done is better than perfect.
Oh, such a good one.
So that has always resonated with me when I've got stuck in the, but it's not quite right. I don't want to push it out there, or it's not quite right. I don't want to send, whatever it might be related to. And then I go, you know what, done's better than perfect. Get it out
Definitely. And actually, it's easy to say, hard to live by, but it does make a difference if you can live by it.
100%, yeah.
Great. And then what is one super practical bit of advice that you would suggest to our listeners, that's something that they could go and do now, tomorrow, the next day, that you think would help them get a little bit more work joy?
I'm going to go back to the digital wellbeing, and I'm going to say turn off your notifications. And that relates to things like emails, it relates to social media, it relates to all the notifications that are just constantly pinging everywhere and all over the place, because they really can hold back your productivity for a start. They really impact your focus and attention. And and it can send you into a headspace that doesn't bring you joy. If you are working happily away on something and then ping, an email pops up that you don't want to see, it can send you into completely the wrong headspace. So I would say, it's one of the first things I say to people when they say, give me one piece of advice for using my phone less, turn off your notifications. And I think that makes a huge, huge difference.
I totally agree. And I think I read a study somewhere, and you probably know this and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's something like it takes 26 minutes for your brain to get back into whatever it was doing after you've had a notification. And 26 minutes is a long time.
A really long time if we're getting constant notifications as well. Because we never get to the point with 26 minutes because we've had another notification by then. It's true. And another really interesting study found that tech notifications, tech disruption, lowered IQ points by 10 points. So they did a kind of a study of people who weren't interrupted and people who were, and it lowered their IQ by 10 points. And the comparison is smoking a joint lowered your IQ by 5 points. So actually, so tech disruption and notifications had a bigger impact than smoking a joint on IQ. So yeah, it's a one I'm really quite passionate about, is reducing tech disruption, which is just part of our everyday lives now.
And like, no one goes into work one day and goes, do you know what, I want to be 10 points stupider today, do they?
No, exactly. We all want to be on our best and our highest game, and yet if we went into work and smoked a joint, someone would have something to say, wouldn't they?
But that's less disruptive than the less disruption.
Yeah, less impact on your IQ. So there you go.
Again, another stat that is like, what?
I know.
So Sam, where can people find out more about you and your work and what you do?
Well, you can find me on social media. As I say, I'm not kind of hiding away from it. I'm on Instagram, Sam Flynn SM, and you can go and connect with me on LinkedIn as well. If you search Sam Flynn, I'm sure you'll be able to find me on there. And then you can go over to my website, samflynn.co.uk, that I share lots of blogs and my videos. And also on YouTube, actually, I share regular videos to my YouTube channel, and my YouTube channel is at Sam Flynn Digital.
Brilliant. We'll pop all of those in the show notes as well so that people can click on right through.
Fantastic.
Sam, thanks so much for being a wonderful guest. I am going to go and look at my time and look at, I really like the idea of setting, I'm big, alarms work really well for me. Yes. So like I often do a 20-minute like focus time, 3-minute dance party, 20 minutes focus time, 3-minute dance party. I reckon that setting some alarms for scrolling would be really good for my kind of engagement with social media and my mental health as well. So I'm going to go and give that a go.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Sam, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, a huge thank you to Sam for joining me today on the WorkJoy Jam podcast. So many interesting things about social media, about our phones, about how easy it is to get stuck in that scroll. I'm pretty shocked, actually, and I need to go and look at my phone and check this out, that the average person in the UK is spending 4 hours on those social media platforms, 4 hours a day. And then when you add that up, that's 2 months of your year. 2 months. For me, that's a pretty shocking statistic. And I'm sitting here thinking I'm probably part of that. And what could I do with an extra 2 months? Rather than saying I don't have time for this, I probably do, but I'm spending and investing my time perhaps in the things that aren't so productive. And I'm also not for 100% productivity, because nobody can handle that. But could we be doing other things with that time? Could we be more conscious, as Sam was saying, around the time we're spending on our phones? I'm definitely going to look at the timer for a scroll action, because sometimes a little bit of a mindless scroll is really joyful and we don't want to take that bit away. But sometimes it just gets a little bit overwhelming. Sometimes it's not at the right time, or it's not helping us with the right content, and really being a bit more fussy with ourselves about what it is we spend our time on and what kind of content we are consuming. So a huge thank you to Sam. Please do check out the show notes for the links to Sam's website and her social media platforms as well. As you know, the WorkJoy book is out there in the big wide world. WorkJoy Toolkit for a Better Working Life. Please do go take a look at that. It's available at Amazon and on all good bookshops. If you do read it and enjoy it, please do leave a review. That would be really helpful. And if you're listening to this podcast and you enjoy it, please do subscribe, download, and if you can, leave a review as well. It really helps get the podcast out to more people. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.